Thank you very much for the invitation and thank you very much for the opportunity to speak at this international and local audience. It's a pleasure for me to talk about fire ventilation, a topic I'm dealing with since about 20 years. So actually, this is me about 33 years ago after my first SCBA incident. So I grew up in the fire department as a volunteer 33 years ago, and since about 25 years, I'm chief of a regional county. I come from fire science. I'm a fire safety engineer. I'm dealing with codes and fire safety design of buildings, and I'm also a firefighter and try to solve the problems that civil engineers and fire safety designers brought to the fire service. In Germany, we are 83 million people, and we have 1.35 million firefighters. So if you walk through Germany and you meet someone, you can count to 100, and at least one of these 100 people you meet is a firefighter. So we have a very, very strong volunteer fire department. 80,000 people in the technical aid service, 300,000 volunteer people in the Red Cross organization. So we are very much engaged in volunteer work for the community. And I think this helps also the career fire department because the whole fire service in Germany as a union is very, very politically strong. About 22,000 volunteer departments, about 30,000 firefighters in industrial areas, and about 30,000 career firefighters in the large cities. So that's about the German fire service. The county I'm serving is about 250,000 inhabitants in 38 towns. I have 2,500 volunteer firefighters just in my county. Again, the ratio 1/100. We have 80 fire stations with 200 trucks and 4 industrial fire brigades, just 50 kilometers each east of Stuttgart. I'm talking about fire ventilation because I think it's a very fundamental topic and problem on the Fireground. A lot of people die not because of the actual fire, they die because of smoke. And it's not only the fire death that we should look at, it's also the people that go in fires into staircases, and sometimes in an incident you see people with their stroller just in the smoke, and all these people, they suffer from severe smoke inhalation, and we should address them. So it's also kind of something you heard already in the other things, the other presentations. We are all children of our environment. So firefighting and what we do is strongly influenced by our tradition, our tactics, the stories we were told from people with their experience, and we only make the experience with the tools and the training we received. So if you're in a stress situation, you do what you're trained, so therefore we have to train as we go into fire, as we fight. And every one of us has some experience, but we all have to realize, and therefore I like these international meetings, because you are confronted to experience of others with other tools, with other experience, and with other tactics. And it's only a possibility to either do things differently in your own country or to learn from the experience of others. It was very interesting yesterday, and I just made this collection of impressions I got from yesterday about what's going on here in Athens. And I think that's the same that John Schaap said. You have to take this information from people here and try to transfer it into your world to see what fits and what doesn't fit to your environment. Like in 872, there was the first invention of a portable ladder, expandable. And if you look how this invention changed and how this invention is now used in different countries, you'll see countries where you have very large trucks, and to make them more maneuverable, you have maybe a second person steering in the back. In Germany, we try to over-design a lot of things, so we have trucks with front and rear steering mechanisms. In Athens, I saw that you have very short trucks to be very flexible because you have narrow streets. So we have to see what others do, and we have to try to get it into our environment and to see what fits into our purpose. A topic which already was covered in some of the previous presentations is the question, do we search for people first or do we first attack the fire? I think it was the question just from the last presentation. And it's always the same topic all around the world, depending on how many resources you have. Do you come with 2 or 4 or 6 firefighters? Can you do both jobs or multiple jobs simultaneously, or do you have just one crew and you have to decide whatever you do? And both things combine and are connected together with the question, what are the air and smoke flows in a building? What is open? What is confined? How can we confine the smoke and the fire in a compartment? Which civil engineers and safety designers said, well, this is the apartment walls, this is the apartment door, this is the staircase door. So normally, without any intervention of the fire service, a fire should, in a good building, stay confined. But yes, sometimes there are doors open, and sometimes we, as the fire service, open doors and allow smoke to spread. And we should always stabilize the situation. We shouldn't make it worse. And by opening just doors, we sometimes make it worse because we allow smoke to travel and to go into larger compartments of a building. So we think that smoke and airflows are fundamental to deal with fire dynamics on one side, and on the other side to say which part of the building is a dangerous zone and which part of the building might be smoke-free and might be okay for people to survive without any aid of the fire service. Sometimes we only look at tragic events to learn from them. They are so hard, they are so painful that we learn from them, but we should also look at the thousands of incidents with the near misses where people had severe smoke inhalations. It's not only the very, very hard things that we learn from, but like if you look to London, after the Grenfell fire, they bought hundreds of smoke hoods, they bought stair curtains and smoke curtains, so they dealt with the topic and they learned from this painful lesson, but I think we should also learn from all the other incidents. In Germany, we had a severe fire just 1.5 years ago where a whole apartment block burned down. Luckily, no one got killed. And on the other side, just last year in Bronx in the US, you had a fire with 17 people dying on upper floors in the staircase. And again, if you look at all these incidents, we have a problem if the staircase is smoke-filled. If the fire is on one level, we say we have a two-dimensional problem on one level of the building. And we can concentrate our resources on firefighting and evacuation on a two-dimensional level on the fire floor. But if the staircase is smoke-filled, we have at least three-dimensional problem because the third dimension, the height of the building, is also included. And I will add it's the fourth dimension, it's also time. Because if you don't know how many people are above the fire, you have the next 10, 15, 20 minutes, and people realize that there's a fire in the building. After 5, 10, 15 minutes, they're starting to get frightened, and they want to get out. So you'll meet people in smoke-filled staircases in such an incident. So we really focus on keeping a staircase smoke-free. If you look at other countries, and I really like the Paris Fire Department because they are very, very trained. If you look what the exercise they do every morning, every firefighter has to climb up just such an easy task. And if you do this on a daily basis, you can fight like you're trained. Because in a stress situation, they will climb out on the outside of a building. They will do things I will never want my volunteers to do because we are not trained, so we can't do this in a stress situation. And they really do things which I think are very, very strong, but it has to fit in the environment. If your firefighters can't do it, you can't do these exercises, but these things like rescuing people through smoke-filled staircases is also something we have to train, and we do, and also getting people down staircases that have wheelchairs or walking mobility issues is an important task. And if you are in New York and on a daily basis maybe, or maybe weekly, you do rope rescue, you can train it. In a stress situation, you can use this method. We can do neither one nor the other. So we have to focus with our fire service on other things. If we look at the housing situation in Germany, we have to realize that half of our population, 38 million, lives in one or two family dwellings, and half of our population lives in multifamily dwellings. So in all these multifamily dwellings, the staircase is the most important room in a building. If we control the staircase with little resources, we can cope with the fire. If we can't control the staircase, we have a three or at least, or maybe even four-dimensional problem. So there are different tactics. In Germany, we are divided into several countries, and each country has some papers how to deal with fire, but the staircase is in all of these things very mandatory. And on the other side, if we look at what fire departments do, They come, they have to go through doors, they have to stretch hose lines, and somehow we have to get water on the fire. And both actions have really a key problem with each other, because you see a lot of pictures where actually the action of the firefighter allows smoke to spread. Sometimes the staircase is smoke-filled on our arrival, then we have to clear it, and sometimes it's smoke-free, and then we have to stabilize the situation, and we shouldn't make it worse. And it goes very fast, so, and even firefighters don't realize how fast a staircase or a corridor can fill with smoke. This is half speed, what you see now, so you have a few seconds more to look at it. Normally it's twice the speed than in this movie. If you open a door, you need just a few seconds. Now we are at 5 seconds in this movie, and it's videotaped by a civilian next to the fire apartment. And after 10 seconds, he has to close his door. He can't escape anymore, so we are locking people in. And we don't want people to be locked in the building, but on one side, often they are. And then they should stay in place, because it's the safest place to stay in their apartment. They shouldn't go out in this period where the staircase is smoke-filled. So either before, or they should stay in their apartment. But it's hard, because to control the fire spreads, to control the flow path, it would be nice if we have a very concealed compartment. Because in a closed compartment, the fire will run out of air after, if it's a substantial fire, maybe 30 seconds or a minute, then the fire will starve of oxygen. If everything is closed, the fire can only be small in limited compartment sizes. But as soon as we open up the fire, additional oxygen has access to the fire, either from the window, you get a two-dimensional flow, smoke out, fresh air inwards, and especially if we open a door. We have a 2-meter height opening, where you allow fresh air to flow in low and smoke to be released high. And this really can feed the fire, and we have to be aware that fire will exchange gases. It's like a motor. If you close everything, it will suffer down, it will be throttled, but if you open it, it will have the ability to accelerate. So with these sentences, the staircase is the most important room, and we should always stabilize the situation against sudden changes, never make the situation worse. Always try to stabilize it, and from this position to make it better. We should have a strategy for buildings with multi-floors and people above the fire floor. But if you train in these buildings, it's always the same problem. Like on fire safety design, on one side, I'm designing buildings. I have 30-minute fire-rated doors. They are there for 5, 10, 15 years. People don't like them because they close automatically. And in case of a fire, we open these doors, put a wooden hatch on it, and open these doors to access it as the fire service. So we are destroying and we are taking over. We are taking responsibility for the building, because means of safety are things that we block, that we destroy with our action. And in this case, we'll take on responsibility for the outcome. So it's also not a good idea in this situation to put water on the hose, because you're squeezing the door and you're blocking the escape route of your own firefighter. So it's a safety issue in this case, if you have self-closing doors and you have to use hoses. So we tried to analyze what are the parameters to secure that the staircase is smoke-free. And you can calculate and do whatever you want. There are some of these factors so strong that you can never be 100% sure that you will keep a staircase smoke-free. So what are the influences? It's on one side the size of your fan, it's the entrance door, it's the staircase, it's the friction in the staircase, it's open windows in the staircase which reduce the pressure which you might be able to create. It's a lot of things in the fire compartment, like turbulence or the fire size, the opening to the outside, and of course our enemy, which is wind, and we heard about a wind-driven fire already in the presentation before. But from all these interesting things, we found that position number 5, the entrance door to the fire compartment, is a place where we always want to be. This is our access point, and it's the most important point to influence the smoke spread into the rest of the building. And this is a place where our firefighters always want to be, because it's the access point to a fire compartment. So worldwide, there is a discussion about how to protect, how to close a door, how to prevent smoke spread. You can either keep the door closed and try to extinguish the fire from the outside with a floor below nozzle or with your aerial appliance, with whatever. You can try to keep the door closed. You can put a firefighter there. You can maybe try to keep the door at a certain position. You can cut the door into two halves, so you open the lower part of the door and keep the upper part of a door closed. Or you can do some things in your buildings. You can have doors that have a small integrated door. You will find these on vessels, because if you are on a ship somewhere on the ocean, you have to fight a fire, and the people will stay on the vessel. They can't be on shore. So you have to fight the fire without allowing smoke to spread. And what they actually have is doors with integrated doors, so they can fight the fire and close the door behind them to avoid smoke spread. And solutions, this is from Peru. They have some openings in doors in staircases, which you can destroy easily as a fire service and put your hose through. Or this is an industrial plant in my county where you have a connection. On one side you can connect your hose, and on the other, and you can close the door behind you to prevent smoke from spreading. So some solutions that are used somewhere around the world, pick up the one you might find interesting. Since about 20 years, we use to a high extent smoke curtains. And this was one of the first incidents. This was a children's room in an apartment block, fully involved in fire. This was the corridor of the apartment, and even gypsum was falling down from the ceiling, so it was quite hot. And this is the next door to the staircase, protected with a smoke curtain. And we found from thousands of incidents that always protecting the staircase with a smoke curtain is a kind of insurance. Maybe it was not necessary because the fire was small, but if it's necessary, it's a great hint and a great help to don't allow the staircase to get smoke filled. 2008 in Munich, you'll see if they open the door, you get a few cubic meters of smoke from the pressure in this apartment, from the buildup of temperature and volume gain, and after a few seconds, a few cubic meters of smoke, the rest of the incident, in this case, also stayed smoke-free for the staircase. Berlin 2013, and in 2012 and 13, we had a survey in the Berlin Fire Department. If you arrive on scene and the staircase is already smoke-filled, you have people above the fire floor, how do you rescue them? How do you judge them? And from 0, which is a very good point, to 6, which would be the baddest point, they had jumping pillows, 4.4, so not even acceptable, portable ladders, rescue hood, aerial ladders, and the cleaning of the stairway with a positive pressure fan and a smoke curtain was created for all the Berlin fire chiefs that attended this survey to be the best option from their practical experience on the Fireground. This is nearly 10 years ago. Vienna 2014, some pictures. Hong Kong 2015. I could show you pictures of thousands of incidents, but maybe this one is also a nice one, which is easy to understand. It's 4 cameras on 4 different places. You'll see the fire department opening up a door on the first floor, and immediately there is smoke. So they use the smoke curtain to protect the staircase from getting any smoke flowing into the staircase. You'll see now a camera which is on the helmet of the firefighter when they go inside. Now you see a picture of the outside. So it's a fairly well-developed fire. In the staircase, still the fire service goes into action. Now they go interior with their digital thermal imaging camera. And you see on the lower side, the staircase totally kept smoke-free. And watch this guy. He was checking the staircase from above without breathing apparatus. Without a smoke curtain, this amount of smoke would have filled the staircase. And there's even another one coming down the staircase without breathing apparatus. So if you operate on scene, if you operate on a multi-story building, the staircase is the most important room. And we have this experience 1,000 times, and therefore I can just tell you this is a standard procedure in a lot of Central European countries, Germany, and also France and the UK right now. Paris, an incident 2020 with a smoke curtain. A lot of fires in hospitals, elderly people's homes, because therefore you also can't evacuate everyone if you have a fire in a room. So we try to isolate the room, keep the fire in a certain space and don't allow smoke to spread. So dozens of incidents also in hospitals, elderly people's homes, or basements, where it's a great aid. In France, they did some tests in 2016 to see how the fire develops if you give them oxygen or if you cover the entrance door with a smoke curtain to lower the amount of oxygen that is able to flow to the incident. A lot of interesting discussions about how aggressive do we attack? Do we apply water or fire to the fire? Or do we apply air to the fire first? So what is a kind of our approach? But I won't go into all the details of these thinkings. And even with wind-driven fires, at least the winds we have in Germany, we have used it on a couple of wind-impacted fires. And we found that being able to have the whole pressure of a portable fan to the lower square meter of an entrance door and blocking the upper part of an entrance door gives us a great force that is able to sustain some kind of wind, not all the wind. There might always be a stronger wind when this doesn't work, but we already used it in a couple of wind-impacted fires and found it very helpfully. You will create up to twice the pressure and the volume flow with this easy setup, so we use it in combination. Ventilation strategies is also something for a whole other lecture about anti-ventilation or about smoke control. In some countries you have different phases of ventilation, like in the UK, in Germany, we would sometimes divide between defensive or aggressive ventilation, depending on what aim do you have, how do you want to use your ventilators, and how you try to get things smoke clear. We try to tell people that fight underventilated fires underventilated. So first to get water on the fire before you get additional air to the fire, because it will accelerate the fire volume. We have incidents like here in 2009 where a staircase was nearly taken by the fire. This was about the picture of the entrance door when the first attack team went up a wooden staircase to look for children on the upper floor. So the fire was on the first floor, on the ground floor, and when they entered, they put on a smoke curtain into the fire, and when they left, they said, well, the smoke curtain had flames on the other side, but still we were able to go down the wooden staircase with the children and rescue 2 children. So there are different kinds of options you're going to experience if you have the tool. We experienced that on one side we can block smoke from spreading. On the other side, we experienced that we can limit the air exchange, and on the other side we have multiple experience with enhanced ventilation in combination if you have a fan and if you are able to block the upper part of a door. I have 2 videos which are not quite old, they're just a few months, or this may be 1.5 years old, and it's a typical fire in a multi-story building. You have one apartment fully involved in fire, and this is the staircase. So the staircase is also fully filled up with smoke. This is a camera in the staircase. The guy takes the smoke curtain down the hallway to the apartment. And this is the second attack team in the staircase that does the ventilation and stairway protection. So even trying to secure the door and even trying to do whatever is possible, there is still quite a huge amount of smoke which flows into the staircase. And we had multiple people above the fire floor, which you have to address, and where you have to focus your staffing on how many people go to fight the fire. You'll see a person back there. He's tried to close the door and tried to really keep the smoke on the fire floor. But in this case also, we had to fight the fire. We had to secure the staircase, and it's always the same topic. How many staffing do you need, and do you utilize for which kind of task? The second attack team here goes into the staircase, and from floor 4 up to floor 9, we had a totally smoke-filled staircase. We also use hydraulic ventilation. The attack team in the fire compartment uses it, and we are still in progress, and you see people with their stroller and leaving the compartment and being in the staircase, and you still have people that try to leave the staircase in this time period where the staircase still has some smoke. People don't behave always like we want them to behave. Sometimes they decide that they want to leave now, and you meet them in a smoke-filled staircase. That's not good for them and that's not good for you, because then you can't focus on fighting the fire on a safe way. So this is one experience that we made, and this is just a video of 2 weeks ago, which I have from a fire in our area. I have a lot more, but oftentimes you see things from a private dwelling which are not allowed to show publicly. So this is a fire also in a high-rise building, where you see by the movement of this curtain, of the material, what the airflow actually does. And by installing a battery-driven fan, you can also see if you cover the door nicely, or in this case, you have a backwards flow in the middle of the door, so the opening on the other side is too small. And you don't get all the air out of the window. In this case, it's absolutely visible that it's far too less opening on the other side, or maybe wind on the other side. So we find it's a very good measurement to see how active and how good your smoke flow actually is, and how you are controlling all the flows in a building in case of a fire. So this is what we experienced about fire ventilation, about smoke spread control, and we give it a very, very high importance, because we think that it's worth to control the smoke spread and do some actions for 5, 20, 30 seconds to protect the rest of the building from being smoke locked, because this short action gives you the ability with your staffing to concentrate on the fire flow and get your full attention to extinguish the fire, get the fire out, search for victims in the apartment, and to rescue the rest of the building, of the people in the rest of the building. So this is our experience in our buildings, with our volunteers, with our staffing. You have to find out in your world what is your staffing, what are you guys want to do, which tradition, which tools you have, and which experience you want to make. Try to think if this fits in your environment. Some people think it does, some maybe have other solutions. For us, it's just something we experienced and we use on a regular basis. It's not in a test period. There are 10,000s of smoke curtains used, and we have thousands of incidents where we never saw one negative outcome. Maybe it wasn't necessary, you can take the curtain down and take it home, but when it's necessary, it was of a tremendous help. Okay, that's about the presentation. If someone is interested, you can either send me an email about it. You can get information either today or tomorrow. I will be here the whole conference if you have any questions right now or later, whenever you want. Thank you.